because they're actively undermining what remains of Palestinian sovereignty in the occupied territory of occupied West Bank, which is occupied by Israel illegally, for the record. So what's interesting about this process is that it's seemingly not just about. Let's take a look at what he had to say. Shalom Hamas means hello and goodbye. You can choose. Release all the hostages now, not later, and immediately return all the dead bodies of the people you murdered, or it is over for you. Only sick and twisted people keep bodies, and you are sick and twisted. I am sending Israel everything it needs to finish the job. Not a single Hamas member will be safe if you don't do as I say. I have just met with your former hostages whose lives you have destroyed. This is your last for the leadership. Now is the time to leave Gaza while you still have a chance. Also, to the people of Gaza, a beautiful future awaits, but not if you hold hostages. If you do, you are dead. Make a smart decision. Release the hostages now, or there will be hell to pay later. President Donald J. Trump. He's talking tough, like a comic book villain, and this is, of course, happening while White House is confirming that there are talks with Hamas. The Trump administration's hostages envoy has engaged in direct talks with Hamas in Doha, Qatar. White House and Hamas sources confirm, marking the first time the U.S. has negotiated with a group it designates as a foreign organization. Discussion reportedly focused on release of the American captives and a pursuit of a broader ceasefire. Okay? Now, this also came down as a Axios exclusive from Barack Ravid. Here's what took place. Max Blumenthal says, so Israel's sensitive diplomatic moves to the press, which I think this is a fair assessment of the situation. The meetings between Bowler and Hamas officials took place in Doha in recent weeks. While the Trump administration consulted with Israel about the possibility of engaging with Hamas, Israel learned about the aspects of the talks through other channels. One source said, the sources spoke with Axios on the condition of anonymity because they weren't authorized to discuss the sensitive meetings. So Trump and his admin sidestepped Israel to directly talk to Hamas envoys. Israel found out about it and then literally turned around and leaked it to the press. And then, and we'll get to the details in a second, but what ended up happening in the process was Donald Trump coming out and saying unhinged ass bullshit about Hamas. He has one speed only, and it's just, he has one speed and one speed only, which is to constantly blame Hamas, even when Israel is the one who is ruining the talks. Uh-oh, the terrorist lover is crying. I am not crying. This is, I mean, if you're calling me a lover, I suspect that you probably think that, you know, America is a good country, it's a powerful country, blah, 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 right? And if that's your attitude, then how do you not see your glorious president, the Great White Hope, getting absolutely cucked by Israel like this? Clearly, there is an interest from even the Trump administration to try to pack this stuff up to the best of their ability, but they want to do it quietly, and Israel is doing Israel shit, which is voluntarily trying to nuke any kind of ceasefire negotiations by leaking these backdoor conversations that are supposed to be kept private. Under different circumstances, I think Donald Trump would be infinitely more angry at Israel doing such things than Zelensky. This is a million times more disrespectful than what Zelensky has done. Zelensky has done nothing that was disrespectful, if we're being real. Okay? The dynamic is very different, and everything that Trump has said about Zelensky and about Ukraine, and everything that Trump has done about Zelensky and Ukraine is unironically what he should be doing about Israel. But he won't do it. He won't do it because he is a... Anyway, key details. According to Al Arabi Al Jadid, a leading source in Hamas confirmed exploratory talks with the U.S. envoy Adam Baylor 2 weeks ago, primarily discussing the release of at least 4 Israeli American prisoners, all military personnel. The talks followed Trump's call for a gesture of goodwill in Hamas. Hamas's release of Israeli American captive Sojoy Dekel-Chen in the 6th batch of the exchange deal. The Palestinian resistance group reportedly raised the possibility of a comprehensive deal to end the conflict. White House press secretary did not confirm or deny these reports. Additional sources, Axios, Times of Israel, suggest that Baylor has led multiple meetings with Hamas in recent weeks, aiming to secure the release of both living and deceased American hostages in Gaza. The U.S. has reportedly consulted Israel on these negotiations, though some details were withheld, causing tension between the two countries. Times of Israel and Axios reported on this. In the White House briefing, Press Secretary confirmed the administration's engagement with Hamas. She said Israel Trump believes in dialogue and talking to people around the world in a good faith effort to do what's right for the American people. Wonderful stuff. I suppose those conversations didn't go well based on Trump's recent statement. I don't know if those conversations went well or not. I think that Trump's recent statement is not about the conversations going well. It's about the fact that he's trying to throw a flashbang into the conversation by coming out and saying some unhinged shit about Gaza, because otherwise people are going to pay attention to the fact that Israel leaked this information to the press and that Trump is actively talking to the Palestinians. It's going to frustrate the likes, I suspect, of Miriam Adelson and whatnot. And libs didn't stand for a kid with cancer. I love that. I love that you're saying this while we're quite literally talking about Donald Trump's inability to deal with a ceasefire. Fantastic. Yeah. I mean, liberals are, this is true, but the fact that they didn't stand for a kid with cancer is idiotic. This is an idiotic line of argument. I think he's posting the anti-Gaza shit to save face. That's what I think. Okay.
Washington has tonight acknowledged that it's been in direct contact with Hamas in recent weeks over American hostages held in Gaza. Let's go straight to our correspondent in Jerusalem, Lucy Williamson. And Lucy, the US has a long-standing policy of not engaging with groups that it lists as organizations. What do we know about these discussions?
Yeah, that's right, Rita. I mean, this seems to be a striking change in US policy. Until now, it was thought that the US only had indirect contact with Hamas through mediators like Qatar. But a few hours ago, the White House press secretary confirmed that the US hostage envoy was involved in those negotiations, describing them as ongoing, and said Israel had been consulted, though we've had very little response from the Israeli government. A senior Hamas official told the BBC there had been 2 direct meetings between Hamas and a US official, as well as several communications in Qatar, focusing on the fate of 5 Israeli-American hostages who are being held in Gaza, one of whom is still believed to be alive. It's not clear what the outcome of these talks have been, but a few minutes ago, the US President Donald Trump issued a fresh ultimatum on social media, calling it his last to Hamas. Release all the hostages now and the dead bodies, he says, or it's over for you.
We made mention.
What is this? Republican introduces a bill with a grotesque name, the Pager Act, that would require Lebanon to become a U.S. vassal if it wanted aid. Banning of Hezbollah and Amal, ending relations with Iran, designating its own officials as terrorists, and ending all prosecutions of Americans. Wow. Cool. That's cool. Seems good. Seems normal. Mike Johnson was not arrested. His chief of staff was for a DUI. Oh my God. Yeah, I mean, it's silly. It's gross. It's grotesque. But I think the reason why they're doing that is once again to just be like, yeah, we're cruel. What are you going to fucking do about it? It's not a real legislation, I don't think. But U.S. and Israel reject Arab alternative to Donald Trump's Gaza plan.
Of the peace plan in the Middle East that the Arab leaders were discussing yesterday. They're seeking international support for their Gaza reconstruction plan. The plan comes with a 91-page glossary that proposes an enormous rebuilding operation with, crucially, the Palestinians remaining in place. It will be costly. The bill is estimated at over $50 billion. There are detailed proposals in there on how to clear all the rubble. The Israelis and the Americans, though, have already dismissed it as unworkable. There's no plan, they say, for disarming Hamas. They've rejected the proposals to restore and revamp the Palestinian Authority. The more immediate issue, of course, is where we go from here in terms of the ceasefire. Israel's still withholding all humanitarian aid for Gaza, and it's now resisting, it seems, the terms agreed for phase 2 of the agreement. So let's bring in Yolande Nell, who is in Jerusalem. Good to see you, Yolande. The Israeli Prime Minister said this morning in conversation with his new army chief that he is determined to achieve victory. That doesn't sound like there's much appetite to engage with the Arab League.
Well, yeah, so far what we've had from Israel in terms of a response to that unified Arab statement about a Gaza reconstruction plan, really it's saying that this is rooted in outdated perspectives, that it ignores the realities on the ground, and Israel has been standing by President Trump's alternative plan, which envisages the 2 million residents of Gaza being moved away and a sort of beach destination being created there instead. What we had earlier when Mr. Netanyahu was speaking, it was at the handover ceremony for the new Israeli military chief of staff. The former Israeli military chief of staff, Herzi Halevi, tendered his resignation earlier this year, really because of what the Israeli military itself has found to be its complete failure to prevent the events of the 7th of October, those deadly Hamas-led attacks. And we had both Mr. Netanyahu and his new chief of staff for the military talking about the need to have full victory over Hamas.
Obviously, at the root of all this is how to disarm Hamas and what sort of authority and security to put in place, Yolande. There was discussion yesterday of this plan to send international peacekeepers under the UN umbrella. Who would provide those troops, and what sort of access would they be given in Gaza?
I mean, that is something that the UN Security Council is being asked for as part of this plan, without sort of more details being provided. It's previously been suggested that there would be Arab troops that could go into Gaza, and that you would then have a handover as swiftly as possible to a new Palestinian police force with both Egypt and Jordan involved in training up those police officers. But this security issue is really the big one that remains unanswered. I mean, Hamas was not referred to by name in the communiques that came out of that Cairo summit. Hamas, though, has welcomed the final statements that came out from this meeting of the Arab League. It has shown a willingness to cede power. The idea as part of this plan would be that you would have a temporary takeover of Gaza by a committee of independent experts that could oversee the reconstruction, the distribution of humanitarian aid, but ultimately there would be a takeover by a reformed Palestinian Authority. Now, importantly here as well, Israel has ruled out any future role for the Palestinian Authority, which of course at the moment governs parts of the occupied West Bank. When it comes to Hamas's position on its weapons...
Yeah, it's weird because they're actively undermining what remains of Palestinian sovereignty in the occupied territory of occupied West Bank, which is occupied by Israel illegally, for the record. So what's interesting about this process is that it's seemingly not just about Hamas. Much to consider here. Yeah. Comparing Gaza plans, Arab League versus Trump. Arab League says $53 billion, 5-year reconstruction, Palestinians remain in Gaza, technocratic governance, eventual PA control, international funding and oversight. Trump's vision is U.S. takeover of Gaza, removal and permanent resettlement of Palestinians to neighboring countries, long-term U.S. control and development, ethnic cleansing. Doesn't seem like it's much of a plan, really. Odd state of affairs.
What it has been saying is that it will not disarm until there is the creation of an independent Palestinian state. And that is very problematic for the Arab countries that want to see this reconstruction going ahead. It's very problematic when it comes to shoring up the current ceasefire, which is looking so wobbly at present.
Yeah, just very quickly, Yolande, Steve Witkoff, the US envoy, incoming later this week?
That's correct. And really, all parties looking to him to see if he can achieve some kind of breakthrough. He has talked about coming here ready to get an extension of the current ceasefire, which is what Israel is now really pushing for, saying it wants the return of the remaining, what's believed to be 24 surviving hostages from Gaza in exchange for this continuing period of phase one. But we've got Hamas rejecting that, saying it wants to move on. It wants a full end to the war, a full Israeli withdrawal from Gaza.
Thank you very much for your participation.
Ted Cruz absolutely explodes on Democrats for a deep and pervasive problem confronting anti-Semitism. Honest question, why do you wear the MAGA hat? I wasn't here for the inside joke. It's to showcase the apolitical nature of my commentary. Obviously, anything outside of complete and utter conformity to the most reactionary position that you can conform to is considered political in nature. So I am showcasing to all with eyes to see that I myself am an apolitical content creator, not a politician, not a political commentator whatsoever. I am simply a man who is demonstrating common sense. Just a chill guy doing common sense all the time. This is what peak common sense performance looks like. Eat your heart out, libs. Very reasonable guy with very reasonable opinions, a based, centrist-pilled, common sense kind of guy. That hat makes you look smart, lol. See, it's working. It's working. It's literally working. I swear to God. I swear it's happening. Your thoughts on boobs in video games, sir? I want the entire frame to be dedicated to boobies. Okay? If they lower the size, if they make the size of the boobies even a little bit small, oh my God, I will lose my shit. Okay? Yeah, I don't know what else to say about the Trump Gaza stuff beyond the fact that it's completely insane.